And a very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Issues and Attitudes. My name is Jeff Owens, Interim Director at WEIU. My co-host is Annalicia Haynes, who just about broke her phone live on TV and radio there.
Well, I do have insurance for that very reason. Hi, everyone.
And a guest today making his first appearance on the show is Associate Professor of Journalism at EIU, among other things, Mr. Bryan Murley.
It is a pleasure to be here.
Welcome, Bryan. Appreciate the support, too. I saw where you you posted that you were bringing the attitude today, and we have issues there.
Yes, I always wonder why it's not issues with attitudes. I think it would be a much more entertaining program.
It could be, I guess, yeah. I didn't name it, actually. I was just asked to co-host it when we started it, and so I think a previous manager named it way back. Well, the cool thing, let's start with this Rhodes Scholar Award that you received, and kind of talk about what that is, because it's kind of neat what you're doing, and I'll let you have the floor on that one, but it's kind of a neat thing.
Okay, yes, so I should emphasize this is not a Rhodes Scholar.
Yeah, it says R-O-A-D.
R-O-A-D Scholar, and I found out about this last semester. I can't remember who sent around an email, and you get these emails, oh, this would be a nice thing to apply for, and it is a program by the Illinois Humanities Council, illinoishumanities.org, and they have a fund from a grant from somewhere, and they provide speakers to various They provide speakers to various nonprofit organizations around the state of Illinois, and a certain roster of speakers are elected every year. Now it's every 2 years to go around, and the organization pays. It has to be a 501c3 nonprofit. They pay a $75 application fee, and that's it. And then the Illinois Humanities pays a stipend to us and mileage and all that for us to come speak to these various
And you make presentations throughout the next couple of years?
Throughout the next couple of years, I've actually had a community college and a library in Marion contact me for next fall. So,
go ahead.
Oh, and you can only do, right now they have it limited, each of us can do 5 presentations, so that there's a roster of about 25, maybe more. And it varies. It's across the humanities, so there's people who do folk songs, the history of music, the history of art, the history of various, things around the state.
And you actually have 2 different things that you can present for, right?
Yes.
Why don't you talk about both those, and we'll kind of maybe dive into some questions about them.
Yes. So they're both related to former Illinois Governor John Peter Altgeld, and you can submit 2, and they can choose one or either of them. Oh, and you also have to give them a video of you talking, which I was kind of dismayed to find that in 20 years of teaching, I had
There's a
never...
tour going on at East.
Yes, I know. We're sitting here watching people outside the window there. And in 20 years of teaching, I never really had videotaped myself giving a lecture, so I pointed them to YouTube videos, which was, I thought, this will scare them away. But no, they selected both, and one of them, this year, they had an emphasis on criminal justice. Obviously, that's something that's in the news with Black Lives Matter and everything. And so that was one, John Peter Altgeld and his take on criminal justice reform. And the other one was he also faced a lot of media scrutiny, unfair media scrutiny. And so it was about the problem of the fake news and media, even back then, and media literacy. So both so far have wanted the media literacy talk, which I kind of figure is even more apropos. But.
Now, how did you find the information? I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'd never really heard of Governor Altgeld until I did some research on the show. So where did you find, and what kind of piqued the interest that you'd want to write about him?
Well, the first place that I found out about him was from the Old Main. When I first came here, the story was passed around to me that we had this governor who he liked castles, and so he built castles at the various colleges around the state, and that just kind of sat in the back of my head until our most recent former governor who I won't mention his name, who held the universities hostage for 2 years in a budget showdown. And I began doing more research on Altgeld and the history of higher education in Illinois, and found out that he was really far ahead of his time. He was a progressive back in the late 1800s, and brought in things like child labor laws. He believed that women should have equal pay to men, and he did set up the higher education to become what it has become. And so there are 5 castles at 5 of the Illinois state universities. So that brought me back to Altgeld. And then I began reading some of his writings, and the incarceration issue was one of his big stalking horses that he did. And he was very badly mistreated by the Chicago press, which at the time was worse than it is now. Even on our governors of the past few years.
Interesting. So, how you found that out? Mm-hmm. So, when you go to speak, you spoke twice about.
I haven't yet.
Oh, you're going.
I will be in September and October.
So, what do you expect that the audience then is going to ask you about that? I mean, what do you think piqued their interest that they want you to come to those?
Well, I think that there is the historical aspect that Altgeld is underappreciated, considering the amount of good that he did and spun forward into our current state. Excuse me. And so I think that there's an interest in that as well, but mainly these two, at least, I think that it's the focus on media literacy, on figuring out what's fake news and what's real news. And
why do you think the media of his time was so against him if he was really a forward thinker and he had what we would think now would be some really, ideas that are good and even really, really good? I mean, what was it a sign of the times, or is that too easy just to classify?
No, because the people who own the media of the time are the same people who own the media today, and they are not as progressive as probably most of the people who work in the media. This was at the time of McCormick and his editors subsequent to him, and McCormick was not a nice man. Most of the publishers that we lionize today, who was Medill? That's the other one. Who they have named a J school after at Northwestern, or Northwestern. And he was not a nice man, and he did a lot of things to assassinate the character of people that he didn't like or that weren't running things the way he wanted to run, and things like the communist from Illinois, that he is as bad as the Paris communes, and those were some of the labels that were thrown at Altgeld. And this was also during the time of labor unrest, the Haymarket riot, those kind of things, the Pullman strike, he actually had a hand in. And some of the things that he did, interestingly enough, are things that you would probably hear from more states' rights type governors nowadays.
So are you going to find or try to find a way to connect the research that you've been doing to current issues today? I don't know if you mentioned that already, but you mentioned like media literacy, which today even that's a huge problem with the uprise of social media. So is there gonna be a connection, or is there a connection in your research?
Yes, there is a connection in the sense that people today are very quick to take in information that reflects the way that they would like for the world to be, whether it's for or against certain politicians. And there have always been people out there who have sought to harm people that they disagree with through malicious misinformation, propaganda, whatever you want to call it. Even back in that day, he was complaining about anonymous journalists, and he thought that it would be beneficial if everyone signed their name to their stories, which today we don't even think about that other than the editorial page. But I look at Facebook comments and I see people that sign their names to things that are utterly atrocious, and so clearly that may not be the best solution. But he did face those kind of the things like he's a communist. That was totally untrue. And actually, the irony of all this is that his story was about the most American story of rising from nothing. His parents were German immigrants. They had a farm. He worked his way across from Ohio to Missouri and learned the law and took the bar without ever having gone to university, because the University of Illinois hadn't even been, the law school hadn't been created when he was in school, and then built his way up to becoming a lawyer in Chicago and eventually ran for office.
And when was he the governor? Do you know the exact dates? I'm trying to put you on the spot there.
I have some reference materials just because
We're
of that.
talking to Bryan Murley. He's associate professor of journalism at WEIU. While he looks that up so we can...
Yeah, from 1893 to 1897. He served one term, and he pardoned the three of the people who were convicted in the Haymarket riots and stood up to President Cleveland in the Pullman strike, and both of those things went against the barons of the age, the Gilded Age, which is also very relevant to our time today.
There you go. And what happened to him after he was governor? Did he go back into private law practice, or
he tried to run for the mayor of Chicago? He had been, like I said, people had basically destroyed his reputation. He never got the same notoriety as he had early. He couldn't run for president because he was born in Germany.
there you go.
So he tried to run in Chicago, and basically he just kind of declined after that. He died of a cerebral hemorrhage. He was working for actually Clarence Darrow, who was a
Slightly famous lawyer
who delivered the eulogy at his funeral, and he had influenced Darrow on becoming a lawyer. So that's, like I said, those are the things that
History's a
reverberate through
fascinating
the
thing.
ages.
What's really fascinating but also embarrassing is I've never heard of this guy until I saw your thing, and now I feel like a complete idiot. But I guess when I think of governors, I guess we've had such a weird run on governors since I was growing up. Most of them either ended up in jail or kicked out of office. That you just think of I think of like 74 to now as when I think of governors, and I guess I didn't think prior to that, which is my own fault. But interesting that you learned that, and I always loved history.
Well, and I should also mention that I come from a state with our own line of
You're Texas, right?
interesting governors. Yes, I'm originally from Texas, so we have our own problems with governors, but most of ours somehow end up in the White House rather than the big house. But
now that's a book title, right?
but they are as interesting. And like I said, if it hadn't have been for the problems with one of our most recent governors and the damage that was done to higher education in the state, not just here at Eastern, but all across the state, by 2 years of starving us for funding. And here was this guy who set all this up, and everything that I read from him, with a few exceptions of it's the 1890s language, but it's like he was just walked off the street today and started talking about something more contemporary.
Now, maybe, Alice, you grew up with this in the last few years, but the words fake news, I've been around media my whole life. I don't ever really remember fake news other than the last few years under our president of the United States now, Mr. Trump. I don't remember hearing about that, but obviously in 1890s, this guy had heard about it. Is fake news, those words, been in our vocabulary, or is there something that is that's fascinating to me that he thought about this over 100 years ago,
And not the words fake news put together like that, but news that is malicious, incorrect.
Propaganda is the word.
Propaganda,
that comes to mind,
rumors, it comes from politics, most of it. And like for instance, when John McCain was running in 2000 for president, his opponent, this has been written about, and it's widely known that Karl Rove put out a rumor in South Carolina that he was the father of an illegitimate black child, or non-white child, let's put it that way. Those kind of things that kind of go into politics, but they seep over into the media coverage. We didn't have a Fox News or an MSNBC in Altgeld's time, but the Chicago Tribune was doing the same service. You know, they would write against progressive reforms or against unions, and talking all about the glories of capital. And so there's always been fake news. I'm doing air quotes on the radio, which
we're on TV too, the people on your 13.
There's always been fake news, but we just haven't called it that.
Maybe that's
and I can't remember actually who came up with that particular term. It might have been Donald Trump.
Well, and I was just going to add on that false news in general is dated back to Revolutionary era, or pre-Revolutionary War, when and Sally Renault, the journalism chair, is going to yell at me when she sees me because I can't remember his name. But there was a man who would write seditious and very scandalous articles about the king and the governor, and that led to the British king or the British government rather, having to put a seal of approval on different newspapers and stuff. So that way it was
Zinger?
approved. It wasn't Zinger. It was someone else way before. But yeah. So that's gone back. I tried looking it up right now. That's why I was on my phone to people out there who saw me on my phone. But so it goes way back. But the term was coined in about 2015 actually.
There we go.
So
let's switch over to Facebook for a little bit, because I know that you was it 2014 when Facebook changed, and you kind of really were become anti-Facebook, and I get it, because I think a lot of people that are just the Facebook people, they just kind of want to know what's going on with whatever, and it changed some of the algorithms. And just talk about why you think that was a mistake in social media.
Oh, so what bothered me, there were two things really that bothered me. Three. Well, I take it back. There's a list of things a mile long that bothered me about Facebook. But the first one was when they changed the news feed from just a chronological news feed to they would bring up things that they thought you wanted to see.
Yeah.
And my problem was I didn't want to see that. I wanted the chronological news feed. Not that hard, right?
I might disagree with you on everything, but I will agree with you on that right now, Brian. I mean, that's how I look at Facebook. I want in order.
And I kept switching it, and every time I go back, it would switch it back. Now, every time they made a change, they would always say, in order to, improve your user experience. Well, no, you're not improving my user experience, because now I'm getting mad. That was the first thing. The second thing, I found out that they had been conducting a large-scale human experiment on over 600,000 users, where they adjusted the news that showed up in their news feed to be either positive or negative, and then they were trying to figure out whether if you saw more negative news, would you have a negative attitude in your posts? And they conducted this without the knowledge of any of the people that were involved. And this was a big deal in 2015. And that's some Nazi level, I hate to go Godwin here, but that's the kind of stuff that we have informed consent rules for, is that you don't experiment on people's mind without their knowledge. So they did that, and they were just kind of, whatever. Then I started noticing soon after that they were surfacing things in my news feed that weren't friends of mine, but friends of mine had commented on their friends' posts, and I was seeing the post. And one time I saw a comment from a friend of mine, and I responded, and I was like, we all do the Facebook, argument thing.
Because it's fun.
Yeah, someone's wrong on the internet, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to sleep. And so I wrote something, and then I looked, and then I had no idea who this person was. that was kind of the point to me where I was like, okay, I've got to get off this. You're sending me stuff that I have no interest in just to keep me on your platform. And what's funny now, they know that I'm not on there. So they send me emails saying, did you see what so-and-so did? Did you see what so-and-so did? And Alicia just posted something new. But they won't tell me what it is. I have to go click on it. And it's just all about that attention. And I have better things to do with my attention than those things. Is it good for certain things? Do I have a presence? Yes, I have a presence. But I rarely look at it. I post things to it. I switched to Instagram, but Facebook owns Instagram, and I'm kind of pissed off at them. I'm kind of mad at them for the same reason. They did the same thing with their timelines, and now they're going to try to, incorporate it all into one big, huge thing. But yeah, so Facebook is also one of the big nexus for fake news, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, it gives everybody a platform, and some people don't deserve a platform. If I ever think it was been said many a time.
Yeah.
What did Mark Cuban say about it? It's the biggest time blank of all time. Time waster, we'll just say it's
Which is Mark Cuban is one of those people who probably doesn't deserve half the platform that he has either.
I understand. I did like the quote though,
but it is a good quote. He is a quote machine.
There you go. Let's talk a little bit. I mean, now that you've kind of been, your whole life and your teacher journalism, and do you consider yourself a media critic or more of a media watchdog? What's Bryan Murley?
I consider myself a media navigator.
Ooh, different word. Okay. Explain if you can.
I used to use the word Sherpa when I had this multimedia newsletter that I did, and I try to find things that are of value. I am aware that I have to do this as part of my job, but I also know that it is not my life, and there are dangers to it. It's interesting. Jared Lanier, who is one of the originators of the internet, created some of the first bulletin boards and has been around since way before my day, has recently came out with a book called 10 Reasons to Delete Social Media Accounts.
Yeah.
And when you have people like that who his whole life has been, his wealth, his career has been the internet, who are saying, wait a minute, we're doing something wrong here. That is, to me, important. And I've noticed the same thing. I broke my phone. I was mad at Apple. I get mad at these technology companies really easy.
We want to keep on our good side, Annalise, if you haven't noticed that.
I was mad at Apple because they wouldn't, their phones are so expensive. And Verizon. And I said, just give me a dumb phone. And I went back to an old flip phone with the T9, text messaging. And I learned two things. One, I have no idea how we functioned with those things. I tried to set something on a calendar. I lost it, I tried to text people. It would take me 30 minutes to text someone. And then the other thing I learned is I can do without social media. I don't need to go check my email every 10 seconds. I don't need to be available 24 hours a day to answer questions from people who can ask me questions during the day. And we need more people to take that dumb phone experiment, and 6 months will cure you of it.
Well, I think people could leave their phone in their car, or they can leave it at home every once in a while, and you will live, because we're attached to it. I mean, and on a college campus, it's about as obviously worse than in some instances. I know some of those folks. So, man, another tour at Eastern Illinois University today. So it's tour day. But I agree. It's funny. You as an Eastern student, when you guys all get out of class, it's the first thing.
I knew it became a problem when I almost ran into a sign, and then it's that realization because I set a higher expectation for myself, being editor of a newspaper and commenting on people walking and with their heads in their phones, and so that was me on Friday, and I couldn't believe it. I was ashamed. But you could set time limits on your phone for that type of stuff. So
I had my two professors in the art department this past 2 semesters have made the point that studies have now shown that you actually lose intelligence when you're taking a test by just having the phone near you. If you have the phone
Because your
on
mind is
desk,
thinking about, is anybody
you are
need-
thinking, well, no, you're thinking, you don't remember it because it's right there. It's on your phone. You have outsourced your brain to a small computer in your pocket.
Couple minutes left here with Bryan Murley. What do you think today's national media, and you can lump it into, or you can single people out, is doing okay with, or doing right with, and then conversely, what are they doing the worst with?
Wow.
Told you I wasn't going to be easy on you.
Yeah, this is sort of a dead air moment. I'll say this. I am cautious with the terms national media, mainstream. Mainstream media is another one that gets me. There is no mainstream media. There's just media. Journalists, I'll say this, the vast majority of journalists working in the media today, print, radio, TV, internet, are conscientious human beings trying to do a job, trying to find out the truth and convey it to people in a timely and responsible manner. The vast majority. Having said that, I think that we have learned nothing over the last 20 years of the internet in terms of politics, coverage of the horse race. We're seeing it now in the Democratic candidates for president. There's, 250 of them now?
At least, I think 18, right?
And the breathless coverage of every little tiny thing as if it is the last thing. And I was just saying in class a little while ago, anytime anyone tells you that things are worse today than they ever were, I know you're a liar. You're not a liar, you're misinformed, because I can point to you to, John Peter Altgeld, who
The Great Depression, whatever, yeah.
or Abe Lincoln.
Yeah.
You can go through any era of our history. Britain, look at what's going on in Brexit over there. It's not just an American thing either. I think that we are too quick to take sound bites, and this is the other thing, is not calling people, just allowing them to say what they're going to say, and then not mentioning that their facts are wrong, while they're doing it. They're able to get out, as Mark Twain actually did say, the lie has traveled around the world while the truth has barely got its boots on. So
We're going to have to end on that one, Mr. Murley. We'll have you back. There's a lot of stuff we can still talk about. We appreciate you coming in today. That's Bryan Murley, Associate Professor of Journalism at EIU.
And supporter.
There you go. Thank you,
Thanks,
Alicia.
guys.
Everybody have a great day. This is HitMix 88.9, WEIU, Year 13.